Introducing AirPro Diagnostics' revolutionary calibration technology, Augie. AirPro Diagnostics' latest innovation is a game changer in forward-facing camera ADAS calibrations. Augie is a wireless compact device that allows you to calibrate vehicles anywhere. AirPro has created a theater-like environment to digitize and miniaturize static ADAS targets and present them to the forward-facing camera exactly as required by vehicle manufacturers. Find out how required calibrations can be simplified. Order your Augie today.
Welcome to Shatterproof, the Autoglass Journey for Independence podcast. This week's episode, Being Your Own Boss, Choosing a Path That Works for You, with guest host Jamie Percival, owner of Superior Autoglass and 30-year Autoglass industry veteran. If you haven't already liked our podcast, click on the subscribe button below and also take a moment to like this episode, so anytime we update the content, you'll be the first to get access to all of this great media and industry information. With that, let's get into the show with your host, Gary Hart, and guest host, Jamie Percival. All right. Hey, everybody. It is Gary with the Independent Glass Association. Welcome to Shatterproof, the Autoglass Journey for Independence podcast. This week's episode, Being Your Own Boss, Choosing a Path That Works for You. We've got a very special guest host, Jamie Percival. She is the owner of Superior Autoglass, 30-year veteran, and the thing that most of you will not realize until you see the clips going by the screen right now is she was this close to stardom and having her SAG card and probably a bunch of other things, is that if you're aware of the Undercover Boss television show, I think it was season 3, episode 2, or the vice versa, Dwyer Group, who is the owner of the Glass Doctor franchise, along with a lot of other ones, actually had intended to have you on, correct? Was that the whole intention?
Well, they did. They pulled a person from each one of the franchises that they own. Like they have Glass Doctor, they have a plumbing company, they have an electrical company, and they chose a person from each one of those. And then they did a filming. And then we were lied to. We weren't told what it was for. We were told they were doing a commercial. But when it all came down to it and we all met up and they told everybody what was going on, that's when we were told we're not using everybody. We're going to pick and choose who we're going to use. So I'm not sure how they chose which ones they were going to go with, but that's what happened. And it was very interesting. I don't know I would want to do it again, but it was very interesting.
Well, you made the intro. I mean, that's good. Out of all their brands, they had 4 in the intro, the 2 that they featured, and then 2 other ones that they didn't feature. The glass was one of them. So at least you made it on. I mean, and I understand. Did Glass Doctor give you something for that?
Yeah, they did. It's crazy. My son had just graduated from high school. So, and of course, they ask you about your background and your family. So what they did was they gave $10,000 towards my son's education, which helped tremendously.
Wow.
I couldn't thank them enough. But the other thing, they offered to set me up. They basically wanted me to train how to do flat glass, which I wasn't interested in doing that at all. And they offered to, if I wanted to do that, they offered to set me up help get my own franchise going. But obviously I couldn't do it in my market. There's already someone here. So that really wasn't an option. But the money that they gave towards my son's education, well appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, that's very generous of them. And it is, I from what I understand about the Dwyer Group and having worked with them previously, it is like family in a sense from the top down. I don't know how how it goes from the franchise level down, but I would assume all the franchisees out there want to have a good family run business to retain employees and treat them. But we also know in this day and age, that's not how all employers are. So that's interesting. So prior to Glass Doctor, though, just real quick, how did you come into the industry? Where did you start?
Well, I started working for a friend of mine. Her name was Norma Brady. She was the warehouse manager here for Safelite in Arlington, Texas. So when I graduated from college, my dad had moved here to Dallas. So I moved here. I needed a job. I had student loans to pay. So I played soccer with her daughter. So she told me she needed someone, a DSR, distribution sales rep. So I said, hey, I'm interested. So I actually started in the warehouse answering phones for Safelite. But you know how Safelite is. They're constantly moving and changing. And so the next thing I know, my position was going to be done away with because they were going to go computer-based. So I went from wholesale into retail. And then from there, it was just a snowball effect because Safelite's always shorthanded. So I went to work for a retail shop. Well, they always needed help out in the shop. I would go out and help prep glass, help set the windshield, anything to help the guys move a little quicker. Well, it just got to the point where I had done so many things repeatedly, I could do it without them being there. So then it got a little crazy. I wound up on their catastrophe team. I don't think they have that anymore. I started like after the hurricanes or a tornado, I would go into those markets and work side by side with all of them to replace auto glass. I worked for Safelite for 15 years and then finally said, I've had enough of the bankruptcies, constantly freezing our wages. And as a female at the time at working for Safelite, every time they brought in a new manager, I had to prove myself all over again. That got so old. I mean, it really did get old. And, you know, at the time, we were always told by upper management, nobody will ever hire you guys. You guys are the bottom of the barrel. But when I finally said enough was enough and I decided to look for other opportunities, I was amazed how many glass companies came forward and said, heck yeah, we'll hire you. How much do you want? Paid way more than Safelite offered.
Yeah, and that's just the corporate culture versus entrepreneurs, small business. You know, I'm sure it's just the bravado that somebody like a big company like Safelite and others, Glass America and Auto Glass Now. We've just seen that show. I'll just call it that.
It's humorous.
And it's sad because so many and just kind of to your point, so many of the individuals who reached out to me were women and were either in the role of front office and some were in the role of back office. And, you know, the front office was just always at odds with how that transition had happened from big corporate. And it was that same mindset and attitude that everybody was replaceable in an industry where that's not exactly true. I mean, there's still every day we see glass shops on social media and other forums say, we're hiring, we need people, generous wages, 401k. I mean, all these things that you don't normally see in the automotive aftermarket are being offered just to retain talent. Sadly, that still is pervasive, probably in all corporate, but still corporate in the auto glass industry. So that's a shame. So then you wrapped up your 15 years with Safelite and kind of went back into the same thing with a Glass Doctor franchise, right? Or something in between?
Yeah, when I left Safelite, I went and worked for Glass Doctor for a little while. I enjoyed working for Glass Doctor, but you're limited. Once you move in, you go to work for a company like that, there's no growth. Whatever you go in to do, whether it's a CSR, dispatcher, installer, that's your job and it will not change because there's nowhere for you to move to because it's a franchise. You can't move up. So I went to work for Binswanger for a little bit. I liked working for Binswanger, but then again, they were very similar to Safelite. They were being bought and sold. Our wages were being frozen and it just got ridiculous. So then I decided that that's it. I'm done. So I worked as a subcontractor for a little over a year and got an idea. I got a good look at what it would take just to go out on my own. And that's when I said, that's it. I'm done working for pennies on the dollar. I'm starting my own company. And that's what I did. I did that in 2017. I mean,
and you had all the experience under your belt. You were inside of a warehouse. You saw the guts of Safelite. But you had that experience. And again, too, it sounds like for these big companies, there's little to no upside for being an employee, let's say on the shop level. I don't know what it's like to be back at their Columbus call center, their New Mexico call center. You're probably in that same rut. CSR is a dime a dozen. They're college kids or older individuals who maybe work from home now. But it just sounds like that lather, rinse, repeat. And if you're a tech, you get caught up in that. You become the head tech of your shop in the city. I mean, and then you just buy your days until you retire. And it doesn't sound like there's a lot of upside retirement. You know, Binswanger, like you said, they've been through so many ins and outs. And now all these people in the, let's call them the Driven Brands glass division, because I don't even know which name to use for them. You're just a ball inside of that bingo cage now. Your number will come up and out you go. And you didn't get anything for it. Except a pat on the back at Christmas going, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's sad too is there's no longer very, like Safelite, I don't know about other markets, but here in my market, their training program's done. They are, if they run a training program, it's literally non-existent right now, because the people that they had doing the training, they're gone. They're not even at Safelite. The other locations, the other companies here locally that say they're training, well, the people training them aren't qualified to train. So I don't know. It's a strange time to be in our industry right now, just because of the whole Safelite and Autoglass Now / Driven Brands fiasco is the way I look at it. They went nuts going around buying all these companies, and now here we are. I mean, yes, is it unusually slow right now? Yeah, but we should have all seen it coming. If you did not prepare for it, shame on you, because you should have seen it coming. So why did Safelite and Autoglass Now have to do all these layoffs? They're large billion-dollar companies. Why are you having to lay off employees? And they didn't lay off a few. They laid off hundreds across the nation. And I mean, I've always questioned that. You know, you're a large company. Why didn't you prepare for this? You have people who market, run strategies, statisticians. You should have seen this coming, and you should have been prepared for it, rather than laying off your employees, especially right before Christmas.
Yeah, and I think the bigger thing that we hear too is just the valuation originally for Autoglass Now. And to a lot of viewers and listeners out there, Autoglass Now was a very regional player in the sense that we would call them the lowball auto glass shop, where they made the advertisements for things like $99 windshield replacement. That was a lot like there used to be out here on the West Coast for a while. Troy Mason ran his group that way with Groupons. You know, you're going to get a Groupon coupon for a windshield replacement for $90, and you were promised 2 future repairs. It's a model that was not really ever sustainable, but in volume, and a customer that maybe bought a Groupon and forgot about it, it was just cash in Troy's pocket. And Autoglass Now has a very storied background, going back to federal indictments and things back in the day. And in fact, the original, one of the founders or the CEO back in the day actually went to federal prison for 2.5 or 3 years. So it's never been a real strong company. It was just a multi-state with technicians as assets and some property. And to somebody like Driven, who I still don't understand why they wanted to grow their market in the U.S. I know the previous owners of Uniban, the Demarays and some other individuals, especially the owner, his partner who owns PH Vitris up there. All of it, they had the idea of coming into the U.S., but the U.S. is already so saturated with players, big players. And to think that you're just going to huddle all of the worst or best of the little guys together and cobble them, All-Star Glass in Southern California, you know, here's a strong regional player acting as a TPA for some SoCal, some Southern California insurance companies. I don't know what the future holds for them as being part of it. But certainly, in my opinion, they were being run under a very fair owner, and they had good growth. And maybe some employees would disagree, but for the most part, there's a good acquisition they made. But they didn't pay as much for that as they paid for Auto Glass now, and I don't think any of us will ever understand why they did that.
No, none of it makes sense. I know that one of the largest companies they bought here in Fort Worth, A1 Auto Glass, when they bought that company, it had 27 technicians. I would say he had probably 50% of the dealerships in Fort Worth that he did work for.
Wow.
Today they're down to 7 technicians, and I don't think they have hardly any of their accounts left. They've literally ran them into the ground.
That's sad.
But it just makes you stop and wonder, okay, if there's a technician shortage, where did all these technicians go?
And I think that's why we see a lot of the technicians on social media now going, hey, I just was working for somebody, and before I go to work for somebody else, should I go out and work on my own? And I know I had this conversation with Mike Stevens, who's with Sika, and he also ran his own business for a while. And the conversation piece that came out of that, and maybe it's similar for you, is the startup cost. Because before, your previous employer was paying for supply and distribution, paying for your insurance on your van, the gas, and all of that stuff. Now, all of a sudden, if you're not willing to invest upfront $20,000 minimum for a single technician / owner now, you are not going to be able to launch your company. In my opinion, I don't know what you think.
No, I agree. In fact, one of the women that worked for Migrant, her husband works for a local glass company, and I ran into her, and her husband's like, well, I want to go out on my own. I want to go out on my own. And she asked me, she goes, what do you think we would need in the bank? And I told her straight to her face, minimum $25,000. If you don't have $25,000 in your bank account, then I would say stay where you're at. And it's not as easy today as it was 20 years ago to walk out and start your own glass company. Vehicles are not inexpensive. Commercial insurance for that vehicle is not inexpensive. The tools that you need to do the job correctly are not inexpensive. Now, most of these guys that are currently doing auto glass, they have the majority of the tools, but they don't think about warranties. If you're working for a company and you have a callback, you don't pay for anything that's wrong with that vehicle. Your company does. Now, if you screw that car up, you're on the hook. You got to pay to fix it. And it would probably not surprise too many people of the number of people that are out here installing glass and they call themselves a business. They have no insurance. If they mess up a car, they have no way to pay to fix it. They're basically blocking that person from their phone number. They don't have a shop. They don't have their home address on there for the customer to drive up and bang on their door. They now just let the customer hanging out the drive. And I know in my market, that's the case for a lot of these independents that are out working. They have no insurance. And the minute you call them and say, hey, I've got a leak, boom, they blocked your call and you'll never be able to contact them again because they have a P.O. box for their address.
Yeah.
I've had customers call me.
And it's not only a P.O. box. Some of these guys have gotten crafty and they're using addresses of, like, they have a buddy who's a technician at a mechanical shop or something. They're like, hey, I'm just going to use your address. Don't worry, nothing's going to be sent there. And I've gotten some calls from consumers who have said, hey, we noticed the shop is an IGA member. We use your IGA lookup, but we rolled up and the shop knows nothing about them. And I'm like, oh, we don't do address verification. Maybe they were there once, who knows? But that's also a new one now. Or they rent space at car washes and they just say, hey, can I use your address? I have to in order to do this since I'm renting a billboard. And those people say, yeah, sure, why not? I'm getting a cut of the lead, so sure, And it's crazy, and that's true. And I look at it this way. And let's just say in a given week, at best, you have 10 jobs. You start off, you go out on your own, you have 10 jobs in 6 days. even in 5 days. So you're doing 2 jobs a day somehow. You're still out about $3,800 to $4,500 to your supplier or distributor, or you were on COD, so that just went on a credit card. And now let's just say, the way it happens in most markets is 65% is insurance and the rest is cash. So now all of a sudden you have this receivable that's honestly 38 days in most cases. So you have to be able to weather that. And now you got next week and the week after that, and that starts to compound on itself to where if you haven't built that credit fast with the supplier or convince them somehow by signing over your entire life to them, even $25,000, it's gone in the first month easily.
Yeah, I mean, you'll burn through it quickly, but it's the cost of doing business.
Yep.
And how bad do you want to be independent?
Well, and that's I guess been since day one. I mean, in your 30 years of background in the industry, I mean, we've seen a lot of things remain the same. And it seems, in my opinion, seems like there's more individuals thinking it's time for them to go out on their own. And I don't know if that is a reason that these shops, mid-level shops, either financially had issues or they just reached their legacy point. So you got an owner who's had a business for, let's say, 15 years, and they're done with it. So they're winding it down. They hope they were going to be acquired, and they're not creative enough to say, hey, let's sell it to the employees. So now you got these guys who are disenfranchised because the owner doesn't care anymore and they're going to go out on their own. I don't remember a time in history, and I've been in this industry since 2001, where there's been this many individuals saying, I want to go out on my own.
No, I've never seen the number of independents sitting at any of these warehouses as I do today. And I think a lot of that comes down to, it's not just a matter of these older gentlemen or women who have decided it's time for me to retire. I didn't get bought by Driven Brands or Safelite. So they either aren't, their kids don't want the company, or they don't put much effort into trying to sell the company. I see it as more of, it comes down to really what these guys are being paid. When I started in 92, I think top pay back then was $15 an hour. And you had to be really good. You had to literally be able to do anything you could. Heavy equipment, cutting glass, on the job site, window motors. You had to be able to do all of it. And top pay, I want to say, was around $15 an hour. So here we are now in 2024. I would say nationally top pay right now is around $30 an hour. So we are how many years down the road and our top paying technician is $30 an hour, and we're working on $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 cars. Some of the equipment that these guys are cutting glass and working on, that's $1 million equipment, and your best pay is $30 an hour. I really think that's where it is. In today's society, we cannot support a family on $30 an hour. It seems like a lot of money, it does, but if you look at how much a home is, how much to drive, not even a new vehicle, but a good working vehicle, to pay for utilities, cell phone, Wi-Fi, $30 an hour doesn't cut it anymore. Especially for these families.
Yeah, and to give everybody an idea, so as of really the close of the year, December 27th, the average salary for an auto glass repair technician in the U.S. was a range of $46,000 to $69,503. And that's before taxes. So that's where you're at there. And right now, as we sit here today, just a whole 8 days into the year, the average out there saying by the end of the year really will be somewhere in the range of $22.40 an hour.
And that's ridiculous.
It is.
You got people who are working in restaurants, flipping hamburgers, throwing steaks on a grill, making $25, $26, $27 an hour, while we're out working in the heat, in the cold, working on nasty, disgusting vehicles, dealing with customers that I don't care what you do, you're not going to make them right. and you want to pay us $22 an hour? That's just. And then I had a conversation right before COVID. I almost went to work for Five Star Glass here, who was technically All-Star Glass. They just couldn't be All-Star Glass here. I almost went to work for them as a store manager in Arlington. And the gentleman that I interviewed with, he's now since retired. He and I had a conversation, and he said, well, the market can't sustain paying a technician $30 an hour. Yes, it can. We, as an auto glass industry, have allowed the public to dictate what our worth is. Well, we need to change that. And it's hard to do when you have these bottom feeders out there going out doing this work for $50, $75, $100 over cost. It's hard to change that mentality. But we as a whole, we have got to find a way to change that mentality, because no one, I don't care what kind of car you have today, no one should be able to get a windshield installed for less than $250. It just shouldn't happen. I very rarely install a windshield for less than $300. If you are doing a quality job, you're using a quality product, and you are sending a quality certified technician out there to do the job, you can easily charge what it's worth to pay that technician $30 or more an hour. I know it can happen. I know it can be done, because we've got to raise our prices. It's just all there is to it. Mechanics have raised it. Look at what the body shops are getting paid. Look at what the mechanics are being. Every mechanic in my market, they're out for months. You can't even drop your car off. They are booked for months out, and they're not cheap. They're not cheap. And auto glass should not be cheap either.
And that's a point too, where so we have NAGS in this industry. So if you're watching this, you don't know what NAGS is, stay tuned for another edition that's coming up where we're actually going to be talking about the relevancy of NAGS. But for this conversation, the labor component of NAGS, it depends on who you talk to and the day of the week, and whether NAGS actually has labor in the current catalog or not for the vehicle you're about to service. But let's just say they do. And it looks like most NAGS labor hours average out to about 2.7 hours. So course of all invoices for a month, you'll see about 2.7 hours. And depending on which past Mitchell/NAGS employee who made comment to either Glass Bites or AGR magazine, or stood in front of all of us in San Antonio or some other venue, told us what makes that up, would be things like driving time to and from the customer, your sundries, the setup time, greeting the customer is all included in that time. Because as they would all like to point out, all past discussions, because they said, once you get past that, the technician honestly only does 20 to 30 minutes of work.
Right.
Right. So now what's interesting is pivot and go to collision repair or mechanical, or even better, look up the OEM repair procedures for removal and installation of, let's just say, a windshield. And you're going to find that it's broken down into 2 or 3 parts. And one is the removal and everything that needs to be done. That is assigned a labor component. The actual then prep and everything that goes into now the replacement is another labor component, or they'll tie that prep into the replacement side. But you've got these separate ones. When you add that up, it's more averaged out to about 5.2 hours for that same vehicle that NAGS might have, let's say 3.2 or 2.8. So the thing is, in your opinion, and you've been around enough to know what NAGS has and hasn't done, rebalancing, are they, in your opinion, relevant anymore to our industry? What's their pros for us keeping that around?
They're not, as far as I'm concerned, they're not relevant at all. When I first started, our pricing from the distributors was based on NAGS. We got our percentage off NAGS pricing. They don't do that anymore. They quit doing that years ago. The only people who are using NAGS, and they're using it against us, is the third-party administrators, because they want us to give them a percentage off of NAGS. Well, some of the jobs that they'll send me, I can't make a dime off of. In fact, I would pay them to do the job because the percent or what they want percentage off nags, I can't even buy the part for that. Then if that job does show 2.7 hours, they want to pay $40 a nags hour. Are you flipping kidding me? I'm not doing a windshield for $150. You've lost your mind. And then they also don't want to pay you extra to go mobile, but yet but the Safelite gets paid to go mobile. Safelite gets paid to take the windshield back to their warehouse and throw it away. There's a lot of factors in play, but no, I don't think nags is relevant. And one of the things that I so wanted to step up and tell that guy, just because I can walk out there and do that job in 30 minutes, it's just like a mechanic who gets paid Mitchell hours to do an oil change. Let's say they get paid an hour and a half and it takes him 20 minutes. It's because he has the tools, the experience, and the knowledge to do it in 20 minutes. Doesn't mean he doesn't still get paid the hour and a half because he bought everything and he's done it long enough. It's the same in auto glass. Just because I can do that job in 30 minutes is because I have the skills, I have the experience, and I bought all the tools in order to do it. I still should get paid that because I had to buy all this. I have to pay for all that. I have to pay for insurance. So that's why to me, the nags is irrelevant. I think it could go away. I'd be perfectly happy if it did. Nobody uses, I think there are still a few people that when they'll quote percentage off of nags, but very, very few are doing that anymore. Almost everyone is going cost plus is how they're pricing.
And even then it doesn't take the labor hours of what they charge, because that's that's an interesting thing that I don't grasp. And of course, the first thing that all of my detractors will come back and say is, well, you're not running a glass store. And I've run enough businesses to know the value of labor and what employees should be paid and whatnot. And the thing about these markets is if you don't publish what your hourly labor rate is. So go into any mechanic shop. They have that posted on the wall. Go to your dealership. They have their basic services, what those are, posted. Now, that doesn't mean that's what the customer will walk out with, but it's the starting point. And if you don't have a starting point for your customers to realize, or, because I think people just look at auto glass as, well, I'm either going to pay almost nothing out of pocket because somebody will step over their dead mother to get the job, or I have an insurance policy that I don't care. I'm just going to call them out. I don't even care who does the job. Just do the job. Mm-hmm. But this labor component is such an important piece because, to your point, that's how technicians get paid more. That's how your employees get bonuses and they get raises. And at the same time, if you're not working in your market to establish your rate, then you're doing a disservice to everybody else in that market. And I'm not talking collusion here. I'm not saying everybody get together at a Holiday Inn next month in your area and say, we're all setting the labor rate at 85. No, it should be like, set your labor rate so that you can include those things and be prepared when another COVID hits or something similar.
Right.
Yeah,
I think if we as a nation have to go into another lockdown, the government's not going to come and bail people out. We got bailed out that time because it came out of nowhere. Well, we're all aware of it now. And the government has been putting out there, hey, you're aware now. You need to be prepared now. So that's another thing I don't think that a lot of the public has soaked in. Government's not going to bail us again.
Nope.
They're not going to go to our mortgage companies and say, hey, you're going to have to work with them to keep them in their house. The insurance companies are going to say, you know what? Don't worry about that month. No, don't worry about it. They're not going to do that again. They're not. And I would be amazed to know how much of the public actually have money in the bank if that were to happen again.
No, and from what I understand, not a lot. I don't know specifically in this industry, but across all industries, the savings component of small business is negligible, almost wiped out. And that's if they started to begin with. A lot of shops are hand to mouth, and we even see it right now. That unfortunate issue with Frank and his eyesight. All it takes is rushing the job, which is not on purpose, and you make you just forget one thing. We're all human. And the next thing you know, not only does it jeopardize your livelihood, but it sits you on the sidelines, not being able to make income. Now, I normally would coach a shop to say, you should have an insurance policy that gives you short or long-term disability, and it's $40 a month. But hey, guess what? When you are rushed and something happens, you've got 2 months of disability insurance, or you've got 6 months. But in order to pay for that, you have to have a fair labor rate, and you have to stick to it. And you also have to have a fair pricing program. And you mentioned something earlier in your statement about, well, the TPAs want you to take 52% off NAGs, and sometimes you can't make money. Now, the sometimes we're still looking to gauge that in the industry, because there is no doubt, because of NAGs pricing not caught up to supplier or supply chain problems where pricing has gone up and they haven't adjusted for it, even though they're going to claim that they do, that a majority of the TPA jobs, you take 52% off. Well, here's the price. So let's just say it's $450. A glass shop will take a cash price now and make that $275. And I go insane when I say, why isn't your list the same as the discounted insurance at the very least? And well, because they're going to get it cheaper somewhere. I'm like, but that doesn't mean you have to give it to them cheaper. Is that you can say, I can match that, and you show that as a discount on your invoice. Because the thing that these insurance companies do when they do pricing surveys is they're doing exactly that. And a pricing survey would go out. They have to take the list price that you give them, not the final price. That's not considered the actual price of a market. The actual price is what the list is. So every glass shop out there that refuses to at least say, hey, yeah, well, we're $475. Well, I can get it down the road for $325. Well, let me see if I have a coupon for that. I'm running in. Oh, you know what? Here's what I could do. I can get you at this. At least you're driving the marker into a place that makes sense. And I don't understand why. Two things. One, why doesn't a shop want to post their hourly labor? And second to that is, why aren't the cash and the insurance lists the same?
As they should be.
And they're not. And I get cost plus, and cost plus is great. So, if I'm buying 200 widgets in bulk, I have a lower price. I have this expectation of markup after all my accounting sorts out, and I have this, and my investors want 38% return. So after I figure all that out, that's what my cost plus is going to be. Unfortunately, glass has this ebb and flow. You can have a $52 glass part, and then you have a $298 glass part. And while your gross profit margin, let's say you adjust that to, you're going to mark it up cost plus 45%. That's not always the same, because that plus 45% on the higher end also means you had more work to do, a higher liability now in the future, because if that warranty was your fault and you have to rebuy that piece of glass, 45% wasn't enough. And I don't think a lot of operators, glass shop owners who are just now getting into it, are taking these things into account, because I would much rather see the pricing of NAGs go away. I think it's going to be very difficult for the industry to reinvent, to just go to OE part numbers. That's going to be an absolute crap show, because we know how those always change. Especially they'll have a split year, and then the next thing you know, it's -A001. So nobody's going to know what the hell's going on with that. But I think if we're going to redo NAGs, get rid of the pricing, let's go with an MSRP that the glass manufacturer set, and let's get Mitchell to adjust the glass hours to the rest of the automotive aftermarket, so that it is based off of collision and mechanical and others that have a different scale, and we actually work off of the OEM.
I think that would work in favor of every glass company out there. They may not like it in the beginning because it's going to be new. And that's the other thing that drives me crazy. The auto glass industry is an ever-changing industry, but you still have so many people in our industry that, oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm sticking to the old way. Catch up with the 22nd century, my friend. We're getting there. You need to move up, and you need to learn right along with the rest of us. I've been doing this 30 years. I don't know it all. I learn something new every single day because the technology, these cars that are coming out, it's crazy. You're ever learning, and these guys that'll say, no, I want to stick with the old way. The old way is not working. It's not working. That's why you haven't moved out of that same hole in the wall shop you're in. It's time to get your mindset to, I want to make things better. I want to do better. And that's where a lot of our problems are too, especially with technicians. And we've got a couple of guys, they'll hit me up every now and then at the warehouse. Hey, I did this job and I've got this problem. And I'm like, well, number one, if you look the part, you'll feel the part. If they're in tennis shoes with holes in them, cut off sweatpants. And I'm like, oh my God, driving a truck that looks like he went out to the junkyard and put a steering wheel on it and drove it out of the junkyard. And that's what he's working out of. And I'm like, you've got to be better tomorrow than you were today. You have to. And it's the same with business, with Autoglass, these owners. You have to do better tomorrow. And it's not about your bottom line. It's about everybody that works there. You have to help them get better as well. And we're not doing that as an industry. Nobody's doing that. Michael McCarthy, what he has accomplished up there is amazing. And kudos to him for taking that step and saying, I'm done with the distributors. I'll buy my glass myself. And I hope he takes that East Coast. I hope he cleans the carpet with them. I really do. And I wish I had the fortitude to do that. I don't. I can't. But we need more owners like him, because he's making a difference up there, not only for him and his company and his employees, but for even the independents up there that are buying glass from him, because he's making sure they're getting a quality part, because he's not handing them something that's damaged and dirty and scratched. Where I know I read daily what these guys are complaining about, what these distributors are delivering to them. But what do you expect? They're paying these guys that are delivering glass, what, $12, $13, $14? What do you think you're going to get? You know, that's why I pick my glass up. I don't let it be delivered. But it as a whole, we have to work together. You know, I know you don't see mechanic shops all working together. You have a couple of guys that are friends, so they'll swap work back and forth. But if we truly want to make a difference in the industry, we are all going to have to band together. We're all going to have to work together. We're all going to have to figure it out to move our industry forward and to make it better. I just truly believe that. And I hear a lot of these people like, I don't want the government getting involved. I don't want us to have to be certified through each state. I don't want to have to go take a test. Maybe not, but somebody needs to do it. We have way too many people still installing glass that are not doing it properly, and they're putting the public in danger. And we as an industry, that reflects on all of us, not just one company.
Yeah. And definitely to your point about Michael's operation. So when you see his videos, they're in their branded clothing. You can identify who they are, just very much like the way you are right now. And it's a striking difference. At the last Autoglass University in North Carolina last month, I walked in and I'm like, whoa, uniforms. And it was a departure from what the students normally look like, because two of the bigger groups that sent their technicians in were from a Toyota dealership. So, you know, they either had their outfits on from work, or they had a branded apron already that had the Autoglass name and their name on it. Identifiable. And then you looked over at the other group where these guys are either their boss just sent them because they need certification for a program, or they're just getting started in it, and there they are with the belt buckles and everything that they're going to lean over and just start scratching and at the same time going, you can't, just because we're here at the university and you're learning, you need to get into that mindset now that when you go out, you should look the part. And then that's what helps differentiate the industry is everybody has that look and feel. And I know in the past when I've had discussions for doing direct bill programs on behalf of independents with insurance companies, the top 5 things, the number 2 item after safety for their insured was the technician had to go out in a branded, identifiable uniform, and that it was something that was laundered and could be proved was, weekly updated or monthly, not ripped, not torn, not jeans. There's a whole set of curriculum. Like that's your number 2. Your number 1 was safety. Number 2 was clothing. We're not even up to pricing yet. And it was shocking because that's the one thing they will say Safelite provides. Glass America provides, and you're like, almost every Novus shop I go into, same thing with Glass Doctor. It's a Glass Doctor. It's Novus. It's that if you're going to be the part, look the part. And it's sad because it's the easiest thing for a shop to do. Now, I mean, even if you're handing out the junk T-shirts that I don't know, Instant Ink or these online, you can just go online, upload your logo. Next day, FedEx shows up, you got 48 T-shirts. You're like, wow, and it cost me nothing. Go ahead, guys, use them to clean when you're done. Just take them off and have another one. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's time that owners reflected. Michael's group too. It's going to be interesting to see how well it performs for Michael because it's not going to perform well for everybody. Like, for instance, Frank Jacobs up in Colorado, the greater Denver area. Frank has Auto Glass Experts. He has a whole warehouse and he has glass and he's an independent distributor up there. And there's no doubt. I mean, he has, again, that extra care because as a shop owner himself, he knows what distribution lacks as far as quality control goes. And he ensures that in his distribution spot, that's the same. But so there's a Frank, he has his own independent. There's not going to be a lot of other independents, let's say in Denver, that go, you know what, I'm going to start warehousing my own glass. And the thing too about warehousing glass, and I know there was a run that had happened, some industry veterans from Supply and others kind of got together and they were going out across the country looking to create another glass network, buy up shops or put them under banners. But they were also promoting, hey, you're large enough, you should be buying your own glass. And we're going to get you container shipments and it's quality glass. It's XYG branded at the end of the day. So it's .XYG. So, but if you've never inventoried your own glass, warehoused it, follow OSHA rules, understand the insurance is different. You have pickers, you have it's an entirely different business model from then just being a glass shop. So you again have to be prepared. And then you better know what you're buying because, and in certain areas it's easier. You can go to the motor vehicle department, say, give me a list of all the registered vehicles, take that against what your point of sale system has said you've done in the last 5 years. And then go, okay, I need to stock these because these are the constant ones. Now, Michael's a little bit different too in his area, and I'm sure he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but he has a lot of fleet business. And it's easy to also say, I'm going to stock and warehouse glass because I'm going to see all of these from Hertz, from whatever, from the city. And it's this, what that constant turnover is. But there's a lot of shops that have just recently started to warehouse glass and bought it that are already finding out, I have 5 cases of this and I've sold 1 in the last 6 months. And that's even now letting glass shops buy from me. I've still only sold 1. So it's not for the faint of heart. It requires a sizable investment. In fact, I would say if you're not ready to put in $300,000, that's going to include your first order of maybe up to 10, 15,000 pieces of glass. Your warehouse is going to cost you $4,000 a month. Then the employees, all the equipment, everything. You got to be into it, and you got to know too what your market needs to buy. So that's an interesting play there, and that's one way direction of the industry going. Because too, All Star Glass in San Diego, they used to have 7 locations that warehouse their own glass. And it made sense for them to also have like a lot of Mercedes and BMW OE glass in stock in Southern California because the dealers didn't have it. And even over time, they whittled themselves down to 2 warehouses in California. And even then, when you visit them, you're like, wow, that's a part that I didn't even think anybody still had in stock, because it goes back to like 2002, because they never sold it. I was at a dealership / group. It used to be called Glass by Tony in Oklahoma. And he had $1 million worth of inventory when he sold the business to the dealership group. Dealership group goes back there and says, honestly, what can we use here? And it was like, so they kept the inventory for a year and then ended up writing it off as a loss, because again, it's a risky business if you're not in the turnover. Yeah. So it's, good luck, Michael. We can't wait to see how that pans out. But what else would you say? I know real quick too, calibration. Do you think the industry could have survived without recalibration money?
That is a very good question. Our industry would survive because it's glass, it breaks. And right now in my market, because of the economy, I'm getting calls for door glasses on a daily basis, which 2 years ago, I may have done 2 door glasses a month. Now I'm getting those calls daily. So I know vandalism right now is on the rise here in my market. But I mean, I think absolutely our market would have survived. And you've got too many people who are like, well, calibration is going to go away. These cameras are going to eventually start calibrating themselves. That's not what I'm reading. That's not what is the professionals, the experts are saying. These cameras are not going away. There's going to be more cameras. I've already seen some of the cars that are coming out that have back glass cameras. You see that camera on the top of that back glass. You can see it. It looks just like the one on the windshield. So what's going to suck for us here in Texas is we have hailstorms. So what's going to happen to that camera after a hailstorm or a tree limb falls on it? That's where it's going to get iffy. Would our industry be making as much money as we're making right now? Granted, these calibration systems aren't cheap. They're not inexpensive. The updates that we have to pay for on an annual basis, are they cheap? No. Are they overly expensive? No. Not for when you look at what you're charging for your calibrations. So I know a lot of companies have been able to really advance themselves, really help grow their business based on what they're making now off of calibrations. That has afforded them to buy better equipment, buy better vehicles, better train their employees, provide tools that their employees either couldn't or wouldn't go buy. They can now purchase them for them, and it's not going to really hurt their bottom line. So I do think the cameras with the recalibration has helped our industry. Would we have survived? Yes. It would have been the same old, let's all drug along day by day. You know what I mean? Where now you can't be this guy who goes and smokes a joint at 8 a.m. and then go out and try to calibrate an Audi windshield. That's not going to happen anymore. You know what I mean? When I started in 92 and then Safelite decided, well, we're going to do a drug test. The entire company has to do drug testing. They were leaving in flocks. I couldn't believe it. Just running out the door. Managers too, just peace out. I'm out of here. When they started drug testing. And so, now what's kind of crazy is we come 360 around and now it's the marijuana is legal in a lot of states. But even though it's legal, you can't be high as a kite and think you're going to go calibrate a Mercedes-Benz windshield. That's not going to happen. So it eliminates a lot of that as well, because you're not going to go down a fifth of gin and then go out and install this windshield and try to calibrate it. So, it's caused our industry to step up our game a little bit as far as who we employ, what we train, how we train them. So to me, it has benefited our industry with 100%. I would prefer that these calibration systems weren't so expensive, because we're constantly having to buy targets and hey, this brand new car has come out. I don't have an update for it. So even though I'm going to do the windshield, I can't do the calibration because there's not an update for it yet. So there are still a few limitations, but I think calibration definitely did improve our industry.
And to your point there too, it's a lot of people don't realize almost all of the non-OEM calibration systems license the data and targeting info from the OEM. So the OEM may or may not have a fixed price with the tool manufacturer. They may have a blanket price that obviously now, let's just pick on Autel. Autel has GM price for everything, and now they have to not only pay for that, but make a profit on it. So everybody gets dinged $2,000 a year or $1,000, whatever it is. And then there's other ones where it pay per use. And, some of those you have to like get an authorization, and OEMs now are like, they're staring down obsolescence of their own programs for all of this, mechanical, recalibration, ADAS, you name it, because their dealerships are exiting. They don't see a purpose. The Rivian, Tesla, Canoo, all their models now are proving that consumers will buy a vehicle and just have it delivered or go pick it up. And at the same time, it's kind of a shame. I don't see Ford's program for windshield replacement and calibration going anywhere, because there's so many people that still have the tools to do it, and you don't have to be Ford certified. And unless an insurance company says in the policy, if you own a Ford, you have to only go to a Ford deal, people have the choice. And especially if I have cash, I'm going to go to the person that says, yes, I will recalibrate your Ford F-150. Are you Ford certified? It's going to calibrate. And you'll get a certificate saying it. Great. That's all I care about. So for everybody out there that doesn't understand that it's not just the tool manufacturer. Now, at the same time, there is some exploitation perhaps occurring on the recalibration tool level where they're viewing it as a gold rush, because over time, these systems will be simplified to where they are dynamically, statically recalibrating themselves. But it doesn't take away the complexity that when you put all of this back together, you still need to ensure by connecting to the system that it's all in the place that the system needs in order to recalibrate itself. Because it would be ridiculous to think, but I'm sure AI will change that. That back camera, let's say you're drunk on that fifth and you're high as a kite from that morning, you put the camera on backwards, put the glass on, and you leave. Now the AI will go humans and just reverse the video automatically. That'll probably happen. But yeah, there's still going to be a check and balance. But I've had a lot of shops have the fear that there needs to be a path now that either slows down or stops the path to the cheapest calibration, whether it's dynamic, static, or both. That they're seeing in a lot of markets now, their competitors are charging $99 static calibration, $179 dual. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So they're saying they're going to put the car out on the road with a technician, drive it, fill up the gas tank, do all these things for such little return. And it's just shocking, and have the insurance for it, all of that stuff. And so there's a lot of people saying now, well, if I'm going to buy $15,000 to $20,000 of equipment, who's to say in my market I'm now barely paying for the annual renewals and getting new equipment, tablets, brakes, to your point, targets. I've been to lots of shops where they're like, look, that's our target graveyard. So sometimes the tech has to go out. We have 2 techs, but we only have 1 good target. That tech has to make that target work. So that's the other thing, because now you're either buying them. Some shops have started taking, when they get the target, they take it to a reproduction center locally, and they're paying a hell of a lot cheaper to get it done there. Some say it works 100% of the time. Some say they have to go back and get it reprinted a couple times before it works. And however you look at it, those are still expenses, and you're looking at several $1,000s each year to put back into your recalibration tool. Just one. If you have many, multiply that. And I think that's, that's something that gets in the way. And as far as the rest, like the next 5 years, if you could stare into your crystal ball and say, how is in my market the business going to change, and how are you going to react to that?
Oh, wow. I think in the next 5 years, there's going to be major changes. I really do think so. And a big reason is because if you look at what Safelite and Driven Brands did when they came in and they bought all these larger independently owned shops. Well, I don't know in a lot of markets, but in my markets, that eliminated a lot of shops. There's a lot of independents out doing mobile work, but as far as a consumer driving up to an auto glass shop, not like you could before COVID. There used to be, you could at least find at least 1 or 2 glass shops in every city in my market. That is not the case today. And a lot of those shops that these consumers are driving up to, they're not the better glass company. It's another Auto Glass Now type company with not experienced, not fully trained technicians that are working in shop. They're the ones doing the $99 for the windshield. Come on in. I think after these next couple of years, those companies are going to struggle. They are going to struggle because they're not doing calibrations. Or if they are doing calibrations, they're doing them really cheap. They're not going to survive. That's why, to me, it's imperative that we all keep our prices up. We need to raise them more because companies like that, we need to push them out. We've got to find a way to push them out and get rid of them. And I think in my market, that's going to happen. I really do think. I think a lot of these guys that are working independently that don't have a shop, I see a lot of them moving into that area, getting shops, starting to hire and possibly train some of these guys that are installing, but make them better. I see that happening. I don't see a bunch of independents waiting for Safelite to train technicians and cut them loose. I think you're going to start seeing more of these experienced, qualified technicians taking other technicians under their wings and making them better, bringing in trainees and making them good technicians. And once we do that, that's when I see them going back and opening shops. We're going to have shops. More and more customers are asking for shops because they're reading online. Well, my car they have to use targets. It has to be done in shop. So they don't want you to come mobile. They want to take it to the shop because that's what they have read online. So I think that the industry is going to get better. I honestly do. It has to. It has to get better. And I see that happening within the next 5 years. What I'm hoping is that the government doesn't get involved. I don't want to see the government step in and start telling all of us, you have to be certified. You have to be registered through the state. We want to know where you are. We want to know who you are. I hope that doesn't happen. If it does, it does. But I'm one of the people hoping that does not happen. Would it make our industry better? Maybe. Would it make it worse? Maybe. That's a hard call. But in the next 5 years, what I plan to do is keep trucking along like what I'm doing, change with the industry, try to improve every single day to make what I'm doing better than the guy next to me is doing. And if we all moved in that direction, our industry would get better, 100% better. And that's what I'm hoping for. I love our industry, and I've done it for 30 years. It's really all I know. So I hope we succeed and become better.
Yeah, and it's I know there's a few states in the last 10 years that have adopted that government requirement of certain registration and things of that nature. And everything that the bigger companies went in and told legislators was going to clean up didn't really amount to anything. Because it didn't change anything. Because first of all, you have enforcement, and enforcement in auto glass, it would be a very difficult thing, especially if it's a cash job. And And even if you registered your business and said you're an auto glass company, it doesn't stop technicians from moonlighting, friends and family, things of that nature, advertising advertising in local papers. Because again, there's not enough government employees in a state, let's say, to check licensees. Like I know, like the barber industry in a lot of states, you can't have a cosmetology license. You have to have a barber license, a very specific license to do something that's been done forever. That just we're regulating shears and scissors and other crap. But most states barely have a half a person in that division to go out and enforce anybody who's saying that there's a barber, to ensure they have the latest license hanging on the wall. So same thing that comes to auto glass. And sadly too, like, the IGA is definitely behind the Auto Glass Safety Council. We believe in everything that the Auto Glass Safety Council does. That's why we're on a lot of the committees. But sadly, even getting these things passed into law, a couple states that have, that say you have to follow AGSC, you have to be there. When you get down to the enforcement part, there is no enforcement, which means while it's a law, it's an unenforceable law. So even if somebody showed up and said, you're not following AGRA standards, okay. And then they would go, okay, have a nice day. Thanks for letting me know. Here's a pamphlet that maybe the government employee will hand you a pamphlet. But without enforceability, what are you going to do here in Arizona? One of the laws requires if there's calibration that's necessary. I know Florida has it now as well. You have to let the customer know in the quote work order process by a piece of paper with a certain font size and everything. And I can tell you 98% of the shops don't do that because a consumer would go, okay. And this was something that SafeLight convinced the insurance companies and vice versa that we have to go lobby for this because we have a high number of these jobs that are being done that maybe are being done fraudulently. So these laws go into effect and it doesn't statistically change anything in those states with regards to that. So the basis of at least where the IGA would be coming from is we would heavily get involved in those states that, or even on a federal level, where we would go out and say, look, we've already got the poster childs where we could show you it's failed for you. So this is just, I don't know who needs reelected, who needs a check written, go crowdsource it. Go set a GoFundMe up to get your senator's seat back. But we're not going to sit here and pay you like maybe other hobbyists would, because it doesn't work, guys. And you would have to have a full-time staff. They don't even get around to, like, I know like a lot of states like Texas, Arizona, we have a lot of semi trucks going through. And our Department of Public Safety has like 8 part-time vehicles that can go around to enforce pullover weights, tire checks, and things of that nature. So the sheer number of government involvement in it, I don't want that to go that way either, but it is something that may become possible because SafeLight and these insurance companies are running out of tricks in their bag as this moves along. And there's no doubt recalibration blindsided the insurance industry, blindsided how they wrote policies for vehicles that required it. And now they're heavily lobbying the companies that make technology, including the OEMs, to say, you've got to come up with a way that reduces our loss cost on it, guys. So that means possible, auto recalibration. And another thing too that is a very good thing that you brought up, and we've talked about here briefly, is women in the industry. There doesn't seem to be enough of them on the technician side, and mostly we find them in the CSR role. Very few women auto glass shop owners. I think you're in a very small group. I mean, we could probably cup them in both hands and go, this is it for the entire U.S. What's the encouragement that you see? Because too, we're going to see a technician shortage, in my opinion, in the next 5 to 7 years, because I'm not aware of a trade school or organization that's going out in high school in the shop classes or the specialized vocational schools to say auto glass is a career.
Yeah. When I work for SafeLight, we have there's a school here. It's a technical school. They train students how to work on motorcycles, cars, all the way up to the Kenworths, the big rigs. I went over there twice in my 15-year career at Safelite and demonstrated replacing a windshield, because Safelite was trying to recruit from them, because they figured, well, if these students are mechanically inclined, we can pull them into our industry and we can train them to be auto glass technicians. There's a Grand Prairie here where I live. There's a technical high school where they train them how to be chefs, how to be mechanics. They do not, that I know of, guess I have a couple of friends that are teachers. They don't bring anyone as far as auto glass in to go, hey, have you considered the auto glass industry? Let me do a demonstration of what it incurs to do windshield replacement. And the crazy thing is now, because of our setting systems that we have today, the battery powered caulking guns that we have today, the wire systems that we have today, you don't have to be physically strong to do windshield replacement. With all the equipment that we have today, you don't have to be 6 foot, 250 and bench press 300 pounds. You don't have to do that anymore. You know what I mean? You know, you can be 5 foot tall and bench press 75 pounds, and you can do auto glass for a living. So it would be nice to see that people going into these trades and going, hey, have you considered this? Because I agree with you. People such as myself, I can't replace auto glass for the rest of my life. There's no way. I'm going to have to eventually start looking into moving away from the installation and into another field, into another opportunity. And I see a lot of technicians that are my age starting to look at that, because the aches and pains are there. You know, I don't care how well you've taken care of yourself and how much you've worked out. Those movements of pulling that windshield out, setting that windshield in, that is not a normal movement. That is not something your body was designed to do, but we had to do it. It's just what that's facts. I mean, I see guys whose hands are all crippled up from pulling those coal knives and everything year after year. So there's actually, it would be easier for women today to get into the industry than it was when I got into the industry, just because of all the technology that we have today to help. How to draw them in, I don't know. And the reason I say that is like in Arizona, here in Texas, it's hot. And it's not just hot here, it's humid. So from, let's say, May to September, it's backbreaking to stand out in that heat and work. You know, during the winter, it's not bad here. Usually we'll get up to at least 40 degrees, 45 degrees every day. So it's not so bad in the winter. You can tough it out. But to try and talk to a lot of these women, hey, won't you come work outside? The answer's no. Hey, let's go pop the hood on this car and take these wipers and cowling off. I'm not getting my hands dirty. So it's a mentality. And really, if you look at it, the millennials don't want to do it at all, because most of them don't even want to work, let alone do manual labor. So without a doubt, I agree. We are going to have to go. I think we're already in a shortage. I was shocked when Safelite and Auto Glass Now laid off technicians. I was shocked. What are you going to do in March when it gets busy again? These guys are either going to be out on their own or working for someone else. They're not going to be available for you to rehire and bring back in. What are you going to do? Because of your reputation, especially for Auto Glass Now, nobody wants to work for you. They just don't. And now that Safelite has started laying off again, because I hadn't known them to lay off in many, many years. But if now they're going back into, oh, it's going to get slow, we're going to lay you off. Nobody wants to work for a company where they know when it starts to get slow, especially around the holidays, you're going to be out of a job. So yeah, it's going to be tough to draw in new faces into the industry. It's going to be a hard deal. And that's where, again, to me, you're going to have to raise your prices because you're going to have to increase what you're paying if you want to draw in people that you can train and you can keep them in the industry. Because even a lot of the guys that Safelite brought in and trained, they're no longer in the industry. They're like, yeah, not for me, out, and they're gone. And they have no intentions of coming back. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough situation.
When I know this past week, right down in Texas, Kaizen Glass Solutions. So Shauna Davis, who used to be with Equalizer and some other companies in the back, she started this company because it's more for the training, auto glass training and calibration training on the collision repair side, because that's something that you'll go through and you'll get certified and ASE and all of that, and you'll get on your Dow or whatever the paint system's going to be, and you're educated on that, just like we're educated on our primer and adhesives in this industry. But they brush on auto glass this much in your training. So that's why so many auto glass shops do R&R, R&I for these companies. But now we're starting to see these companies are sending their collision and mechanical individuals over to these universities, and now they're starting their own glass companies. So there's already this divergence away from auto glass and collision and dealerships getting along to where now it's just going to go the other way, where you're going to have more trained people perhaps that get brought in through educational programs and scholarships. I know up in Canada, the ARA up there, the Automotive Retailers Association, they actually have a scholarship program every year for British Columbia. And theirs is quite unique too, in that they have programs where the students build like smaller pedal cars. They're given a kit, and part of it is the windshield, the glass, the electrical system, body, drivetrain. There's a whole thing that they go through. And it's interesting because not only do they have the contest, but they have that scholarship as well that gets down to that level. And I know other industries do that, but it's in our industry, it's getting auto glass shops to get behind an industry organization that can put that together to make that work in because everybody always goes, well, what's the IGA do? And I'm like, I don't have time to if I had to type that online, I'd still be typing. That's where I just tell these people, pick up the phone, or where you're doing your next install, call me, because you could just have your earpiece in and I'll be happy to tell you during that 20 or 30 minutes what the IGA does. And these are all the types of things we want to put together. But the industry, again, to your point, we need to bring the prices up. We need to work together to be one, because we're independents. And at the same time, too, promote that ability, because I also am a strong proponent. I normally will tell shops, your CSRs need to go ride with a technician for 5 days, minimum of 15 jobs, some with calibration, some, and have them pull a cold knife so they can truly appreciate, if you have to, what it's like to do that. That's my favorite day at Auto Glass University, is watching people think that's a joystick and they're just going to get in there and move it around, and they get like 1 millimeter and go, it's not right. And you're like, yeah. And then you don't have your glasses on, you're not doing this. And because to your point, sure, wire cutout tools, all these tools now that done. But even then, wire tools, I've seen them put them on backwards. The tension snaps the line, because I'm like, where did you anchor that to? Well, that's the other car. That's not right. It's shit like that. You're just like, oh, okay, But yeah, I think it's important, because that's one of the things, like companies like Burger King and McDonald's and other places, you learn to cook burgers, be the cashier, work the drive-through, mop, maybe help do a delivery, because you're cross-trained. And cross-train builds the foundation that you now can put yourself in someone else's shoes. To your point, it's June in Texas, and it's my 18th job, and the CSR calls me with some stupidity like, when are you going to be at the next deal? And I snap at you rather than just texting you to say, hey, the customer's getting antsy. What's an ETA? Things just so people would appreciate it, but also it now puts that employee in a better position to where you might go, hey, we have a technician spot available, or vice versa. Have the technician be a CSR for a week. and hear the front end before the customer gets it. And you never know. And I think shops need to have more flexibility. Even if you only have 3 employees, have a tech sit in with the main person answering the phone. I don't know. It's hard to see. There's a lot of things we all can say need to change, but then it's a matter of walking the walk, actually playing the part.
You have to take yourself out of your shoes and put yourself in their shoes. Especially someone who's answering the phone. Do you know how many people will call in and don't have a freaking clue what your make and model of vehicle they are driving? And then they'll tell you, yeah, I need a back glass. Okay, do you need the very back glass or do you need a rear door? These guys that are technicians that have never answered the phone, they don't understand that, well, I need the back windshield. You're talking of the back glass, right? Yeah. Okay, do you have a slider or do you have a solid window on a pickup truck? In my market, if you're driving a truck or a Jeep, you got that freaking light bar that goes across the top. So you have to ask about it. If they call in and they need a back glass replaced on a truck, do you have a headache rack back there that's going to be in our way? If so, we need you to move it. But then again, CSRs, because they haven't been in the field and they haven't driven with the technicians, don't have a clue that light bar is in the way. They don't have a clue that there's 2 inches between the cab and the headache rack. Get the glass cut out, run glue, and get the new glass in there. So if you don't put yourself in those shoes and you don't go walk in their shoes, you don't know what they're dealing with. And I was out there. I was one of those people that when it was 110 degrees and the CSR is blowing up my phone and I finally answer, what? Well, your next customer, I will be there when I get there. Click. I've been there. And then I've had to stop, call back. Hey, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll call the customer, but I've been there and I know what it's like. You hear your phone ringing, you know who it is. You don't want to answer it. But, and I think, when I ran the shops, when I ran a couple of shops in the past, I did that. I put my CSR in the truck with a vehicle before I ever put them on the phone. You go ride with this guy. You go see what he deals with on a daily basis. Because, you may have talked to the customer on the phone, but he's now got this customer standing over his shoulder watching him tear the car down. For me, I have a ton of experience. It doesn't bother me. I'll sit there and talk to the customer and carry on a conversation while I'm working. But you do have technicians that get anxious. They get very nervous with a customer standing over their shoulder. That's when mistakes will start to happen because they're more focused on that customer standing there than what they're actually doing. So I'm a true believer in cross training. I think every person, the CSR may not be able to go out and put a windshield in, but they at least understand the concept of what it takes to do the job so that they can explain to the customer when they tell them our time frame is 1 to 5. Well, you can't narrow that down. I'm sorry, we can't, because every job is different. In every job, one job one day might take an hour. That same job tomorrow may take an hour and a half. It is what it is. And that person in the field, when they're going in and they get to sit in that CSR's chair and listen to these customers call, we told you we would call you. You're scheduled from 1 to 5. Well, you can't narrow that down? Not really. The technician will call you when he's on his way. That customer may be calling 5 times trying to get that CSR to narrow that time frame down. You're only getting 1 call. That CSR has received 5 or 6 calls. So, it's a give and take relationship. And I totally believe in cross training. It makes everybody understand what the next person is up against.
Yeah, and it's too, I mean, the one road in and out of your place, we don't know if it's going to have an accident on it, if we're going to get there. Oh, I want you to be there at 8 a.m. Well, we can't even guarantee that because you get to the supplier and they're somebody dropped the ball. There's something missing. And now it's 8:25, and then you show up late and they're like complaining to the technician. You're late. You're supposed to be here at 8 o'clock, and it's like you're lucky that you didn't have to drive it somewhere. I came to you thanks to the industry, making mobile the absolute way to go.
You just want to tell the customer, go in, sip your tea, watch TV, Do whatever it is you're doing. I'll take care of this.
Yeah.
But you have those customers who are curious and they want to watch. They want to see it be done. And it's their car. You're at their house. It's hard to say, hey, go away. You just can't do it. But it's few. I will say this. It blew me away because the guy left me a review on Google. So it was a simple job. I don't even remember now what car it was, but I did the job and everything just like I would any other job. I get all done. I collect the payment, explain the do's and don'ts, tell him, have a great day, and I'm off. Well, I get alerts when I get a Google review. So I'm like, oh, he left me a review. Cool. So I go and read it. This guy watched me do the entire job through his security camera.
Oh.
I had absolutely no clue there was even a camera there. But luckily it was one of those jobs that I could do in my sleep. But, he raved, hey, she didn't even know I was watching. She did a great job, made sure nothing hit the ground. Everything went into a trash can. So it was a 5-star review. But as a technician, that let me know just because they're not standing out there doesn't mean they're not watching. So, for me, whether they're watching or not, I do the job the same no matter what. But it was still mind blowing. I didn't even know there was a camera out there. And this guy watched everything I did from his home, watching through that camera. And that, to me, that's enough right there that makes me remind myself, don't cut corners. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, Ring cameras everywhere. And if it's not Ring, it's some other brand. And, Costco, Sam's, Walmart sell 8, 16-pack security systems that all connect to the web. And yeah, you're showing up at someone's house, their property at least has a Ring cam now, but probably Ring floodlights. And you're being asked to do it right there underneath a Ring floodlight. And there are horror stories. Most of them come out of Florida. It's a love-hate relationship between car owners and auto glass technicians there. But yeah, there's so many of them where, the technicians will just do vile things after being confronted by something on the camera or vice versa. And it's a magnificent industry sometimes to be in, because it's just wild what you hear on both sides of everything. Well, any last parting words? We've had a lot of discussion here. We've seen the crystal ball. We've listened to this entire lather, rinse, repeat kind of cycle that the industry has been stuck in. There's some bright points, but it all sounds like it's a lot of hard work for glass shops to come together, work together. And I think independence is still the big thing. Glass shops, owners that have glass shops now don't want to be under a banner. They have their fiefdom. You enjoy your time. I mean, you probably pick and choose the jobs you want. And now all of a sudden, if you were under some banner brand or some nationwide thing, that now you're like, no, you have to take every call. You have to, and if we say you're getting the job, you have to do it. I think that kind of takes away from it, because there are groups out there. I mean, there's one that came up today that is out of Europe. Somehow Glass America is now involved with it here, but it's along the same thing where they want to come in and just be this mega brand name, but then just send out jobs. You're being recruited, and it's the same thing. If you go to I'm not knocking OptiClear at all, but if you go to their site, it's not find a shop, it's find a technician. So you're not even entering your zip code to find the shop. You're just finding someone who's going to do the job. And that's not what a lot of people want. But what would you have for parting words, or anything you want to shout out to somebody? Pair somebody up. Let the industry know that you're still involved.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still kicking. I will say that the forums that are on Facebook, like AGTT, even though I've been in this industry a long time, I learned a lot from those forums. It's sad that those forums have gotten to a point where it's you've got a lot of bullying going on. A lot of guys that, if you don't have anything constructive to add, just scroll on by. But when they first started, and all the really good advice that you got on there, people showing tools I had never seen before. And I've been in this, I'm a tool lover. I love tools. So when somebody will go, oh, I bought this tool, I use it for this, it's amazing. That is I want one of those. Where'd you get that? So those forums are amazing for that. And I'm glad that Chris Drift and Jeffrey and those guys, I praise them for putting that up and putting it out there. The sad part is now you've got a lot of these guys that are, well, I can't figure it out. Here's the VIN number. Can you guys help me? And I'm like, seriously? We're all using the same VIN lookups. If you're not using the same ones, shame on you, especially since Glass Part Match is free. Come on.
Yeah, there's that. And then also the ones that if you just use search, like how to take out a 23 Yukon or something, it's like, did you search? Because there's 8 of them from the past hour. Like, and at the same time, it's a shame that because there are OEM tools available as low as $99 a month that you don't even have to ask anybody. You just punch in, I have this, and it says step 1 through 10 to take this out. But no, they will sit there, be confounded, take the time to log in on their phone to Facebook, go to the group, post it, sit there and wait while they're staring at the car, hoping that somebody in the next 20 minutes answers them. Otherwise, it's either I'm just going to start something or I'm going to tell the customer I have to come back. And that's the part that social media wasn't really meant for that. It was like, hey, I'll search if one person's done it. At the same time, too, not knocking those admins, but I'll probably hear some shit from Jeff or Chris. And I know it's not their full-time job. They have businesses, but a good group could pin those things up into areas so that you just go to the pin repository and you'll see, oh, there's a Yukon. Or even better, and I am going to promote Glass Part Match because that's what people know me as. They're sick of me with it. But it really is a tool that if you punch the VIN in, you can get vehicle data. There's notes on it, how-tos, and it's all put together by people in the field that say, this is a technician will come back and say, this is what you should do for this car. But it requires them to come back. If you're willing to post it on Facebook, go fill it out on Glass Part Match, because then it's available to everybody. And vehicle data, there's so much more in Glass Part Match that's there, but then there's a lot that isn't, that comes to specific tools. So if I'm using a ProSat or this, well, yeah, I'm not going to have all that information on there, but sharing it, to your point, this is what you do. This is what happens if you want to replace the switch on your Milwaukee gun or something like that. That's great. I think these admins should look at the forums as a business and up the game and make it more organized, because then it does take out the hostility and bullying. And I'll even throw some smart ass things in myself going, well, you're the 900th person in the last 3 minutes to ask to run a VIN. And if you had all of that time to write a post this big about asking for the VIN, Glass Part Match, VIN, oh, okay, done.
Exactly.
And for all of those out there, AutoBolt is inside of Glass Part Match. And if you have an AutoBolt account, you can go authorize your AutoBolt account to still bill through AutoBolt, but you'll get all the data and more in Glass Part Match. So that's something I want everybody to know, because everybody still seems to overlook that and overlook that whole press release we put out last year about it. We're not looking to make any money off of it. We do offer our own tiers that mimic what AutoBolt charges. So if you want to pay through the IGA, great. If you want to pay through AutoBolt, great. But the tool takes care of everything in one shot, and it's the only one out there doing it right now. So if you love AutoBolt, add it to your Glass Part Match account, which is free. Still no charges. Everybody's happy. I just wanted to get that out there, because I know, you see everybody asking constantly on the forums like I do. So,
well, and okay, let's stop and think. You guys, Glass Part Match is the only one offering the service for free. AutoBolt wants to be paid. CRM wants to be paid. And it still amazes me, and it's not expensive. AutoBolt is not expensive when you stop and you think 99.5% of the time they're correct. It's unfortunate all they offer is windshields, but it is what it is. I'd rather them offer that than not have anything. At least with Glass Part Match, you can try to narrow down a tempered part for a customer. And it's free. That's what I keep telling people. Why don't you have an account? It's free. Why don't you sign up for it? It's free. You're being lazy. It's free. I've got some friends of mine that run a glass company. She called me the other day. What are you using as your VIN lookup? I use glasspartmatch.com. Well, why do you use them? Because they're free. And they're tied in with Autobolt. I said, I also use Autobolt, but my programming that I use for my invoicing and all that is eDirect, who owns Glass Part Match. That's why I use them. But they don't know this, and they run a fairly large independent company. And I'm like, how do you not know this? How do you not know this? And she's on the forums. But I think companies like yours, what Jeff and Chris have done with the forums, it's helped tremendously. And I think it's also put a lot on for some of these technicians who thought, hey, I'm doing a great job. Oh, crap. No, I'm part of the hack team. You know, it's opened their eyes. I know a couple of guys here in my market, it opened their eyes. They totally changed the way they do auto glass, and they upped their game because they take pride in what they do. So to me, it's been a benefit. It's been a bonus, and I'm glad that they did it. And I just hope it gets better.
Well, no, and yeah, even on some of the other forums too. I mean, I'm thankful for all of the technicians that share their work, because it is, when you watch somebody just do the most elegant bead, or they're priming, or they're doing these things that you go, oh, I didn't think of that. And even when you hear like James Chapman say some things on his podcast about competing, like it took him year over year to listen to his competitors and take their advice and say, oh, did you know you should do this beforehand? Not that. Oh, I didn't, but I was doing it the right way. And they're like, yeah, that's the right way. And it's getting by, but you could be better. And it's that kind of collaborative effort that happened, but it didn't happen on a forum. It had to happen on phone calls and in person on the competition floor for those aha moments to happen. So all these guys that are posting the videos, and like when Chris goes out and he's training a group of people on Autel or something like that, it gets other people thinking I can do better. But at the same time, I too wish there was more moderation to these groups. Jeffrey's going to come out and say bullying is all going to strengthen us and toughen our skin. And, I'm still staring down a cage fight or an MMA match in one of the Carolinas one of these days. And I'm just like, Jesus, I'm 53 and I have to deal with this shit like I'm back in high school again. Like, okay, at least I'm better prepared for it now. But yeah, I mean, it is, it's the self-policing hopefully will kick in. Those people will get flushed out. And some groups are known for, if you upset the admin, they just push the ban button and you don't get back. So something will happen. Well, I certainly appreciate your time, Jamie. We're very grateful that you've been in the industry for as long as you have. You've shared a lot of great information. Your celebrity status should definitely propel us now into better episodes, because they're like, man, because I know you've been on some other podcasts with Jeff and Chris and others, but they didn't really hone in on your celebrity status. They overlooked that. They were like, let's just talk about what last week, what car was your easiest and what car was your toughest? Right. My answer is all of them are always hard, because even the easiest has some shit show that goes along with it. I have to get around 9 tons of fast food bags and hypodermic needles, but it only took 8 minutes to pull the windshield out, 20 minutes to mitigate getting hepatitis B and, whatever. But I certainly appreciate the industry appreciates it. And we look forward to talking with you again and hope to get you on the IGA board. That would be great. I see some area here that you could possibly get into with training and standards maybe. So we'll look at that.
Absolutely.
And again, thank you. So everybody, this has been Shatterproof, the Auto Glass Journey for Independence podcast. And, check out all the data on Jamie below her shop and some links to some of those videos that we're talking about online about, people running beads and some of these other companies I mentioned. We're putting all of that down below. So just go check that out. If you haven't liked or subscribed, so it just depends on the platform you're at, subscribe or like us so that when we do have a show coming up, you'll be notified ahead of time. And again, Jamie, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we wish you a very happy 2024. It can't get any worse, as they always say. Year after year, everybody says, it's got to be a better year. And then you get to the end of the year, I hated this year. So whatever your year is going to be, we wish you the best.
Thank you, too. And I appreciate you asking me to be on.
Good deal. Very good. All right, everybody, take care. Thank you for tuning in to Shatterproof, the auto glass journey for independence, hosted by Gary Hart, Executive Director of the Independent Glass Association and founder and inventor of eDirect Glass, and 25-year automotive aftermarket veteran. Shatterproof is brought to you by eDirect Glass, the world's leading and pioneering point of sale and shop management platform for the automotive glass and aftermarket industries. They help your marketing, sales, service, and technician teams work as one from anywhere so you can keep your customers happy everywhere. This video series is also sponsored by Glass Part Match, which is a free to any automotive glass shop in the USA and Canada. Glass Part Match provides VIN and license plate to part decoding, aftermarket pricing, labor hours, calibration information, supplier pricing, and a whole lot more. Get your free account at iga.org/GPM. And a big thank you to Independent Glass Association industry partner Augie. Augie is the industry's most technologically advanced, time-saving, mobile, forward-facing camera solution for ADAS calibration, making old legacy targets obsolete. Learn more at airprodiagnostics.com/Augie.